Missed a good case, you know. Blame it on me.
Just use that to
All right.
I gave it to somebody. Oh.
What's your tax code?
I told them we had to swear in. I just haven't done the registration online.
I give it buzz.
Oh.
I got love about it.
Oh, yeah. I'm not the
All right, so that was D. Rutledge at Coxside. All right, so I'm going to email you the instructions. Basically, it'll have an email address and a password that we use for our VChat guest account. All you would have to do is go. You have a computer with access to the internet. Oh, it's cool. All you have to do is go to plus.google.com. This will also be listed in the email, and then you would log in with that email and password I send you, and then I'll have a link also included in that email. You click that link, it'll direct you directly to the meeting. All right, no problem, man. Goodbye.
It's 4:05, about 5 minutes behind schedule, but I'm sure we'll make up that time. Thank you all, first of all, for coming to our very first meeting of the search committee for
for Southern University's President and Chancellor position. On behalf of myself, on behalf of Dr. Tarver, who will also thank you himself, I'm sure, as well as on behalf of the Southern University board, faculty, and staff, we want to thank you all for the service that you all are going to provide for what is an extraordinarily important task that we have in front of us. With that being said, as we'll begin most of our meetings, we'd like to begin with an invocation, because everyone knows we will need prayer. With that being said, I'd like Deacon Howard White to lead us in an invocation.
That's an incorrect statement, Deacon.
Okay.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you allow us to come here today, open minds that can feel the necessary thoughts to receive the information, to make the right decisions that will lead to guide and lives in the future. Allow us to think and reflect how are you. We ask that you allow us to be coordinated, stern in our decision making. We ask that you allow us to think back to what Southern gave to us, so that we will time to tell, times and the nights long, that we will reach back to those times so that we may make the best decision and select the person that will lead Southern University back to the great university that it once was. We ask this in our Son's name.
Amen. Amen. As we'll also begin most meetings, as we are a public body, and even though most of us here are not board members, although we do have some board members represented on this committee, we will start all of our meetings with a roll call. Robin Merrick, who is to my left, here to your right, has been invaluable in our planning processes for this meeting up until now. And I'll ask her today, as I will most, to begin this meeting with a roll call.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Sam?
Here.
Attorney Preston Castile, joining us by internet.
Here.
Attorney Tony Clayton.
Here.
Mr. D'Angelo Frazier. Mr. Nicholas Harris.
Present.
Ms. Sonia Hester, also by internet. Ms. Tony Jackson. Attorney Patrick McGee.
Here.
Dr. Thomas Miller.
Here.
Ms. Charlotte Placide. Attorney Demoyne Rutledge. Did we get him on the computer? Ms. Erin Monroe Wesley. Mr. Howard White. And Dr. Leon Tucker.
Here.
As again, we are a representative of a public body, public institution. We'll always have a segment on our agenda for public comments. Has anyone filled out a card for public comments? No. Is there anyone here present today who may like to give public comments but did not get a chance to fill out the requisite paperwork for that? No. Seeing none, we'll move on with our agenda. Item number 5. We'd like to have Dr. Tarver, who's chair of the Southern University Board of Supervisors, to welcome us, as well as to give a charge to the committee about our responsibilities, goals, and objectives. Dr. Tarver.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Attorney Clayton.
at this point, I'll move if need be to adopt the agenda.
I have a motion and I have a second. Motion is adopted. Thank you.
Dr. Sam?
Dr. Tarver, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Ms. Vice Chairman, members of this committee, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you so very much for being here today and for participating in this all-important search for the next President Chancellor of the Southern University System in Baton Rouge campus. As you all know, and as you may have followed in the news, the board in its last meeting adopted a new leadership pattern for the system and campus. The board voted to merge or to combine both the presidency and the chancellorship of campus in the embodiment of one person. We are now continuing to work on refining the kind of organizational structure that that person that you're going to recommend to us, hopefully, will meet. We have gone through a great deal of challenges, and as you know also, the fiscal crisis that we face in this state and this university is one that will require the best of all of us, a great imagination, a great deal of creativity. And we hope that your role that you play in selecting nominees for us will contribute mightily towards a decision by the board, hopefully effective July 1st. So we're expecting that your timeline will certainly allow you the time to conduct a national search, look at candidates from all over, and deliberate and make recommendations. Now, the charge I have to give is in a written form, and I think copies may have been passed out to you. If you don't, I want to, for the record, read this to you. The Southern University System President Chancellor Search Committee, March 5th, Board of Supervisors Meeting Room, 2nd floor of the Clark Administration Building. Chairman's charge to the Southern University President Chancellor Search Committee. The Southern University Board of Supervisors Board hereby recognizes that the Southern University President Chancellor Search Committee will assist the board screen applicants for the next Southern University System President Chancellor. The board desires that the President Chancellor Search Committee present the board with the top 3 candidates based upon but not limited to the following criteria: educational qualifications, including but not limited to a terminal degree or doctorate or other appropriate degrees from accredited institutions; experience in leadership positions involving executive management, budgetary responsibilities, and fundraising for higher educational institutions or other similar institutions; educational and administrative philosophy; experience and knowledge pertaining to historically Black colleges and universities and public university systems; and finally, an academic credentials including scholarship, teaching, or research experience. The President Chancellor Search Committee is a special committee of the board, and the committee is required to adhere to all legal requirements, including but not limited to public meeting and public records laws. As the chairman of the board, I, along with the board, charge the Southern University President Chancellor Search Committee to meet as needed and take all necessary steps to solicit and ultimately present to the board the top 3 applicants for President Chancellor in accordance with the guidance provided in this charge. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, and I'll join you.
Thank you. Any questions regarding what we are charged with as a committee? Okay. Yeah. Ms. Jackson.
I thought we'd passed them out. You don't have a copy? Oh, she's going to circulate copies to you. Yes.
So yes, we will be passing those out. Any other questions for Dr. Tarver?
Thank you.
There are none. Thank you, Dr. Tarver. We'll proceed to item number 6, introduction of committee members. Again, I have to really congratulate the Board of Supervisors as well as Dr. Tarver for their selection process, for actually getting us here, coalescing us here from many different walks of life, many different stakeholder communities in the Baton Rouge area, as well as in the Southern University committee. I mean Southern University community. And I'd just like for us to take just maybe about a few seconds and introduce each other and tell us a little bit about kind of the relationship we have in Southern University. And I'll begin myself. My name's Albert Sam. I am a former Board of Regents member, as co-chair for the search committee that selected Dr. Joe Rallo, our current Commissioner for Higher Education. And I've been involved with Southern, obviously with Regents, but much more importantly, my father was a 40-year tenured professor at Southern Chemistry in New Orleans for 40 years. And if it wasn't for Katrina, he'd probably still be teaching and lecturing. And I literally grew up on the campus there in New Orleans. So even though I'm not a Southernite officially by degree, I feel very close to Southern. I'm very fortunate to have been asked to help with this process. We all know Dr. Tarver.
I'm Jackie Vines, Wyatt. I can't get used to saying that Wyatt part. It really bugs him a little bit. But it's been, because it's been a little over a year that we've been married. I run Cox Communications for the Southeast region, which includes Louisiana, Florida, and Georgia. Have over 2,000 employees. About 1,000 of them are alumni of Southern University. We have supported Southern since 2000. Feel that they are very much a part of the fiber of who we are within Cox Communications. And know a lot of you at this table, so and have great respect for each and every one of you. So looking for us to do some good work.
Hey all, my name is Pat McGee, member of the Southern University Board of Supervisors, son of a graduate of Southern University of Baton Rouge in special education. My father, I'm a lawyer in Lafayette, and I strive to be as much as I can like Tony Clayton. I am a poor, I'm a poor struggling lawyer. He's a real rich lawyer. I just hope I can learn something from him sitting on this board. But honestly, I look forward to working with each and every one of you. I think that, or I know that, because of our diversity, in many ways, diversity and expertise, I think that, again, I know that we will be able to attain the lofty goal that President Tarver has set for us. This will be my third search that I have been either a member of the committee or a member of the Southern University Board of Supervisors for. In each and every one of those searches, I felt like we had to get it right. In this instance, brothers and sisters, we got to get it right. We have absolutely no choice in this matter. We have to find the best and the brightest. Because if we get it wrong, God bless us. God bless us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Placide, retired superintendent from the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. I retired in 2009. I'm a graduate of Southern a couple of times, and I'm still bleed blue and gold, and my heart's always been here and will continue to be here. And as my neighbor said, we have to get this right. I was asked to be on a previous search committee that did not really materialize the outcomes that we had all hoped for, because it's kind of just what we had started dropped. So when I was asked again by a good friend of mine to come back to do this, I said, okay, it wasn't too good last time. He says, I promise we'll do it better. So, and he's part of this team too. So we got to get it right. A lot of people are counting on us to get it right. And I know for the betterment of the students that are here and those yet to come, they're looking forward to us getting this right. So I'm pleased to be a part of this process. Thank you.
Okay. And you should see in the inbox that
Can you hear
there's
me?
a
Okay.
link.
Tony Jackson, President of Staff Senate,
Click that link.
graduate of Southern University, 2001 College of Business. This is my second time serving on the search committee for President or Chancellor. So I'm excited to be here and represent the Staff Senate of all the various campuses with this committee. So thank you.
I'm back on.
Been a member of the board. But good evening to everyone. My name is Nick Harris. I'm the 2014-2015 Student Government Association president here at the Baton Rouge campus, resident of Rosedale, Louisiana, 15 miles west of Port Island, if you didn't know. And it's just an honor to serve in this committee. Of course, this is my first time serving on any search committee here at the university, and definitely it's an honor to be the voice of not only my campus, but the whole entire system. So definitely, when making the selection, I'll keep that in my right ear. So again, it's a pleasure and an honor to meet you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Howard White, and some years ago, I sat here at the same place that Nick sat and was ironically on the search committee. At the time in which we did for president, it was the president that we selected was for a joint role, Chancellor and president, and I think we got it right without their spikes. It wasn't by design, but it did turn out that way. But I think the key thing that I bring to the table is just the objectivity that I come with. Owner of Top Choice, which is a local retail store here. And also I work with John Maxwell team nationally and internationally in leadership training and coaching. So that's, hopefully bring some of that to the table and so we can get it right. I think that's going to be the theme for them. Let's get it right.
Myself, I think I know everyone at the table, so I'm Robin Barrett officially. I'm Director of Alumni here at the university, and I am pinch hitting and supporting our Board of Supervisors in this search right now, so I look forward to working with all of the committee, chair, and vice chair, and just have chair.
Good afternoon. My name is Erin Monroe Wesley. I'm the Executive Vice President and COO for the Baton Rouge Area Chamber. I'm a 2002 graduate of the Southern University Law Center, and my father, William C. Monroe, is a 1977 graduate of the Southern University Law Center. So happy to be here.
I'm the president of the SUVR Faculty Senate. I've been with Southern since 1996, so I have a few years in. And when I'm in the classroom, I'm teaching German and French. Those are my areas of expertise. And I must say, I'm very happy to be part of this committee. I think it's a good representation of who we are as a community. I think it's going to be a good fit, and I have no doubt that we are going to find the right person for this job. It's very critical that we do.
My name is Tony Clayton. I serve on the Southern's board. I've graduated a couple of times from Southern, like you, Ms. Plessy, and I'm honored to serve with you guys, and looking forward to our deliberations in choosing our next leader. Thanks.
As the only position in the group, I speak with some authority in saying that the most important people in all of our lives are actually our attorneys. And so, with that being said, I mean, there's no way we could go further without our counsel introducing themselves as well.
Winston DeQueer Jr. My dad who also sits here occasionally. I joke that Dr. Tarver recalls many years where I sat in that chair holding a bag for my dad, and I'm honored that at some point I was allowed to actually become a starter. And so if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If you have questions you don't ask in public, most of you know how to get in touch with me, and Dr. Sam can put you in touch with me.
Hello, my name is Tracy Woods. I serve as in-house general counsel to the board and the system. I'm a 1983 graduate of Southern University. My parents are graduates of Southern University. I don't think either one of them wanted to tell the years. And my grandfather worked up here for over 50 years. So I'm very glad to be a part of the Southern University family. And if the same thing goes, if you all have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I will be able to assist you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, there's one.
I was going to ask you to do that as well. She's shy. She doesn't want to offer up her own introduction. So if you would do the honors.
Certainly. I wanted to recognize the young lady who's been responsible for working with this team to put most of this together. She's worked with all of us. Is Ms. Lisa Green. Ms. Green, would you stand so everyone can see you? Thank you so very much. She runs the board's office. She's the secretary of the board's office. So if any of you have any questions, come back to the board. Ms. Green will be the person next year. Comments. Get in touch with the rest of us. Talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm also just been made aware that that we have committee members Des Moines Rutledge as well as Preston Castile, and hopefully we can get them audioed in here. If they could say a few words as well of introduction. Attorney Castile.
Let's see.
Attorney Rutledge.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but hello?
We can hear you.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, and in an attempt not to delay the meeting any further, good afternoon, and look forward to working with each of you.
That's Attorney Rutledge there. Thank you so much. Preston, are you there?
No, Preston.
And he may not be. Well, that's fine. I'm sure everyone here knows Preston. He's the Alumni Federation Director for Southern University, very active in all that is Southern University. We look forward to working with him as well. Moving to tab number 7 is basically our review of the President and Chancellor job description. If you look behind your tab number 6, there are 2 to 3 pages dedicated just to that. We won't read that here as a body, but feel free to go through that information as well. Leave any comments to the committee as needed, maybe not today, but as we move forward. With that being said, we'd like to move to item number 8, which is an overview of the search process, which is a line item task that falls to me. If you turn your attention to the back wall, on the screen we have a brief PowerPoint presentation where we'll kind of go through some of the intricacies with the search process and basically just get a general overview about the search process that we've been envisioning. A little history first before we get to this is we've had extensive conversations with board leaderships over the last several weeks since this committee was devised, and there's several ways searches can be done, the whole manner of public searches, somewhat evolving over the last several months. However, the search that we've been charged to conduct is a search that's very much in the tradition of what the Southern University system, as well as all of its campuses, are very comfortable with. And we feel very confident that we'll be able to conduct a really good quality national search with that charge. With that being said, the very first step for us is to compile candidates. Basically, we have to get candidates to be able to consider. And the manner in which this would be done will be essentially threefold. Number one, by nomination. Candidates will be able to be nominated from national advertisements that we'll run, and in fact, we plan to have some of those advertisements being run in the next, within a week in the national journals. The second way is once potential candidates see these advertisements, once they hear about the opportunity here at Southern, they'll be able to contact us directly through a letter of intent. We'll be more than welcome of all of those letters to get them into the process. The final way is through solicitation. And I can tell you there's no lack of interest and concern about the next President Chancellor for Southern University, or actually the first President Chancellor, as this is a historic position for Southern University. Ever since I've been named as a part of this committee, I've been inundated in the grocery stores and from friends across the nation, people who we need to contact, who may be interested, who we need to have interest in. So clearly we'll be able, through the mechanisms that we have in place, to solicit candidates that we think can fit the needs of what we have and who have a good understanding of what it is that we offer here at Southern University. The next step, once we have a list of candidates, is that we basically have to, are we interested in each other? Do we want to have a discussion about whether or not you want to come to Southern, want to look at Southern, whether or not Southern wants to look at you? And so, and that will be based on essentially review of each candidate that submits a letter of intent, or a CV along with their letter of intent. And that will be our job, basically, as a committee. That's the bread and butter, the core of the work that we'll be doing with that, and we look forward to some vigorous discussion, about what that is, and relying back on our job description to see if indeed there's some candidates that are going to be in the pool, which we expect, who will meet the criteria that we have set in mind. Then after that, the next step is to start to potentially invite some of these candidates to become formal applicants to our position and our job. And some of these steps here that I have elucidated now are somewhat optional, because a lot of it's going to depend on the number of candidates that we feel are qualified, the number of candidates that we feel can meet the standards that we're looking to accomplish here at Southern University. And so I say invitation for best consideration. That would be a best case scenario that we hold the option to do, because that means we have a whole bunch of candidates that we feel we really need to take a good look at. And so as opposed to asking each and every one of them to apply, we can be able to reach out to them to decide early on in the process, hopefully, if that's something that we'd like to do. But again, that's optional, and we may not need to have that happen. And likewise, once we have a core group of individuals that we think we want to apply to the job, we ask them to apply formally. And we ask them to submit a formal application for the job, at which point we then bring them down here and, again, do what we do. We may wish to interview them ourselves as a personnel committee, and ideally that would be a perfect situation, because that means, because again, we're charged to submit 3 names to the board. If we have to interview them first, that means we have a wealth of candidates that we have to consider that potentially could be good candidates that we'd like to submit to the board. And so we have to see them first to make sure that we kind of weed out, well, not weed out, that's not the good word choice, but to find the absolute best 3 candidates that we can on our own before we submit 3 candidates up to the board. And then finally, we come up with finalists after that process. And those finalists we brought here, interviewed by different stakeholders, students, faculty members, legislators, everybody who cares about Southern, again, public interviews there. And then the next day, they'll interview with the board. And the board will be the entity, the Board of Southern, that selects our next president chancellor, well, our first president chancellor. So in general, this is the search process that we think, for the most part, is inclusive. Hopefully it will stimulate vigorous discussion amongst what we hope to be a wealth of candidates, such that we can put forth to the board and ultimately have the board be the ones that select the next president chancellor of Southern University. Any questions about the process as we have it described right there? Yes.
Typically, at least in business, when you're looking for a high-powered person, they don't send in applications. Typically, you have folks that are proactively going after them, like a search committee or something.
Dr.
Yes. The Board of Supervisors took that into consideration in our last board meeting. We discussed that and decided against that for any number of reasons. Chief among those, we wanted to be able to have an open process, and we had time constraints that ordinarily would provide more time to do this than the short time in which we're trying to. From the experience we had more recently in the last search, going back a couple of months, and doing the national advertisement, we were contacted by a number of people who were interested, but who were not interested at the time in having their applications exposed until they could decide much further on, getting information from us, whether or not they would pursue this. And in those instances, of course, that search was suspended before any of this came to pass. But it was also a matter of fiscal constraints as well as the time constraints. In that regard, we decided that this search committee could more directly get this job done for us. And so, if the door is open, to be able to find other ways of inviting people to participate, short of having a search committee do so. Because members of this committee know of people that are interested, and of course they know other people they would like to have interested in talking to us. And that's one of the advantages of having a search committee, is to be able to kind of ferret out the field of potential candidates and to see if they can get people here. Sitting presidents, for the most part, are oftentimes very slow to want to advertise that interest for fear of jeopardizing positions that they have where they are. So it's a much more delicate process. It's one that we think we can better manage from inside the organization.
But since it's a public process, those that we may really want may not want to come forward initially or inquire initially because they would have to expose themselves prior to.
Well, the fact of the matter is that much of the conversation that you're going to have with the applicants are going to be in an initial stage in which they're not applicants. So it seems to me that only when someone has gotten enough information to decide whether or not the opportunity is worth their pursuing it in the fashion that we have to as a public entity. I mean, at some point, everyone has to become public. We can't, there's a limit on what we could do outside of that realm. And we think that the people who are going to be best interested in this are people who understand the limitations we have as surely as we understand the limitations that they have. In the end, we balance those interests out.
Yes, Ms. Jackson.
Not yet.
Maybe I can just speak about that. Is that with me? Just a quick question, point of clarification. The point in which candidates become public, is that when they make it to the semifinalist level, or will they become public knowledge when they apply? I just want to be clear on that part.
There's a legal standard, and there's the standard that we set forth. Okay. I'm sure our council will talk about when we're absolutely required for candidates to become public. And I'd rather defer that conversation to Winston. I believe that is on the agenda. But you know, there's it's like taxes. You know, you never get in trouble if you overpay your taxes, right?
That's right.
You know, so you'll never get an audit if you pay twice as much of your taxes. But if you pay just the right amount, you know, IRS may look, so it's kind of like that. That's an analogy I like to use. Ms. Placide.
About that public, because it's public when, if we were, say, communicating with someone via email, is our personal email going to become part of the public process? Because I know that has been a situation in the past about email and how we communicate with those who may want to have discussions with us.
On the way up here, I was thinking, Mr. Chair, I was thinking to get with Tony Moore to see if we could actually just get some SUS search committee email addresses so that it could all be kept. And we wouldn't get into that.
So that we could communicate before we would have it this time as well. But I also want again to defer this to our attorney because he's prepared a presentation to address this. And I think once that's out there, then I think your question might flow out there when we get to that agenda item.
That being said, Attorney DeQueer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Good afternoon. In your binder is a short, and yes, I have it on PowerPoint, but I'm old school, and he laughs at me for being old school. I like paper. In your binder, there is a short PowerPoint presentation that we frequently use. It's actually prepared by the Louisiana Department of Justice, Emily Boyce is their attorney designated with interpreting public meetings and public records laws for various agencies and local municipalities. And we borrowed her presentation to explain to our clients when they become members of a public body, what are your duties and obligations with respect to public meetings and public records. I'm going to summarize this presentation. The details are in here if you have detailed questions, and I'm going to answer the specific questions the two of you asked. The applicable law, to start with, actually is the Louisiana Constitution. And in the Constitution, a lot of people don't realize, it says, no person shall be denied the right to observe the deliberations of public bodies and examine public documents except in cases established by law. What the public records laws are the exceptions to those cases. The Constitution deems everything public, and the public records law is actually the legislature determining where a privacy interest exists such that we think these records should not be public. So the hundreds and hundreds of pages of public records laws are there trying to list those things they don't want deemed public. The default is that they're public. To begin with, we're going to start with public meetings. The first part, if you look at the fourth slide, of a public meeting is having an agenda. Because you are a public body, you can only meet after a meeting is duly noticed with a properly written agenda. There's a very simple definition of what should be in an agenda. Each item on an agenda shall be listed separately and described with reasonable specificity. As I explained to my clients, the average person should be able to read an agenda and determine what the public body is going to discuss at that meeting. One of the examples we use is if you have something like discussion of contracts, that doesn't tell the public what you're discussing. Discussion of food service contracts could be reasonably specific. For this body, the agendas really will be pretty easy until you get into candidates. Once you get to the point where you want to meet about specific candidates, especially if you want to meet in executive session, the agenda will have to be specific enough to put people on notice as to what this body's doing. So at that point, a candidate would be public. The next thing about meetings is what constitutes a meeting. A quorum of you assembling to conduct the business you're delegated constitutes a public meeting. So if you think about that definition, what we caution our search committees and clients about is make sure if 8 of you are going to meet to deliberate this, you're doing it after an agenda has been properly posted of your meeting. You calling, and I joke with Dr. Sam because we're both members, you calling 7 other fellow search committee members and saying, meet me at the City Club because it'd be a lot easier to talk about these candidates over a good lunch, would constitute an illegal public meeting because you wouldn't post a notice saying, meet me at the City Club, and the City Club is not a public location. So you couldn't do it. So be very cognizant when you assemble to discuss this. Does this mean 3 or 4 of you can't get together and have a cup of coffee? No. But if a quorum of you meets to discuss this, it should be deemed a meeting. If you flip to about the 6th or 7th slide where it discusses convene, one of the gray areas in the law is if you start an email chain, are you improperly convening a public meeting? We advise against that. And what do I mean when you start an email chain? This is how easy it could be. Dr. Sam could send all of you a notice saying, I'm going to post a notice for a meeting on this date and time. And it goes to all 15 of you. One of you hits reply all and says, you know, I really like that resume I saw last week. Another person hits reply all and says, yes, I really liked where they worked and I placed a couple of calls. Suddenly, because the 15 are now on an email discussion, some people take the position that that has started or convened a public meeting that the public has no way of attending. We caution against the use of the button reply all. You replying to one person is not a problem. You replying to the entire committee to convene a discussion becomes the convening of a public meeting outside of the public. Public records, that's really the gist of meetings. Once we get into records, basically everything that the public body uses to do its business is going to be a public record, subject to a couple of exceptions. And these exceptions are really important because you will come across some records that people have very, very high privacy interest in. As part of your business, you might see academic transcripts, you might see background checks, you might see criminal records checks, you might see litigation checks. I'm a lawyer, I could name checks for the next hour. People have a privacy interest in those types of records, and a lot of those records aren't deemed public. When you talk about what is the public entitled to know about, here's the actual statute, and it's listed in the presentation. The name of each applicant for a public position of authority or public position with policymaking duties, the qualifications of such applicant related to such position, and the relevant employment history or experience of such an applicant shall be made available for public inspection. Think about that. It lists very specific things that shall be made available to the public. It doesn't include what grade they got, you know, in second year biology. It doesn't include, you know, the grade they got on their dissertation. It doesn't include how good or bad their credit is. When those things start coming across your respective desks, you need to keep in mind a lot of this stuff may be highly confidential, and you want to be very careful who you disclose it to because it's the applicant's privacy interest that we also have to keep an eye out for. So going back to Ms. Placide's question, it's an applicant that has to be made public. When somebody becomes an applicant, you have an obligation to disclose upon request certain things about an applicant. What we know from LSU's experience with its last search is that somebody simply asking about a potential opening, somebody being nominated by a third person but not yet expressing an interest would not constitute an applicant. There's obviously a whole lot of gray area that we will help the committee and the chairman sort through, But once somebody says, here's my application package, I'm ready to do this, I want to make a run at this job, we know there's absolutely no question there. So that's, I told him I'd try to do this in 5 minutes. I think it took about 7. But that's really the crux of the public meetings and public records laws. When it comes to your email, if you're doing the public's business through your email, those email messages are public records, regardless of what device or account you do the public's business through. It doesn't mean everything in your inbox becomes public, but those email messages where you're conducting the search, the business of the search committee, you know, could be subject to public records requests. So you need to keep that in mind. And the idea of having a single email inbox for the committee and a website makes those issues a lot cleaner. So I'll be over here. If anybody has any questions, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Did your question get answered sufficiently? I kind of, there's some nuance in there, and I just want to make sure you're clear on everything. So, and maybe if I could ask for some clarification, this may help out a little bit. So, for instance, in our process, we elucidated where someone may answer an ad and send a letter of interest. Yes or no? Does that make them an applicant that needs to be public?
I'd have to read the letter.
Sure.
You know, a letter. I'm just. It's detailed because, and I'll use myself as an example.
Yeah.
I could submit a letter which had some questions in it, meaning what type of information I would want to know about the school, or what type of information you would want from me to consider it a complete application package. I wouldn't consider that an application. But if my letter said, I would like to apply for this job, I don't think there would be any question. I really think with a letter of interest, you have to read the letter. You know, I'll read you the language from the court. It's if an individual reasonably intends to apply for the job. You know, that's a tough standard to interpret. You have to look at what the person's doing to determine, are they intending to make themselves an applicant? I can tell you from experience, people sitting in current presidencies will be very cautious about not being formal applicants because most states have very similar public records laws. And a current president will very gingerly feel out, is he interested before he applies, such that his name would not become public until he actually intends to apply. So I don't know if that helps or makes it muddier. There's a lot of gray area in the middle of two not very clear lines.
I just wanted to bring up a point that you may need to address. During the last search, we had a public records request for every item that came to the presidential search email or website, which included both nominations and applications. And I fulfilled that request because that was the request at the time. So we also need to be prepared, and you may want to address that, but that's what the request was from the advocate. They wanted everything that had come through that email account, which was a public email account that we had advertised on the website as well as the in our notices.
But I will say, and correct me if I'm incorrect, a request is just that, a request.
Yes.
So the inference that I don't want to leave the committee with is that by that request you were obligated to meet what they were requesting. You, in theory, could have challenged that request, and in theory, yeah. But Southern chose not to.
Yeah,
so
we
I
just
don't
comply
want the
with the
committee
request.
to think necessarily that a request in and of itself means that disclosure is mandated.
Well,
would that be accurate as a how they did yesterday?
Actually, I'm going to make it more complicated. You're talking about moving goalposts. When we received that request in November, we were making cautious interpretations of the public records request based on what we knew. Following November, on December 30th, the Court of Appeals issued some clarification on the law, which changed our interpretation a little bit. That case is now on appeal at the Supreme Court, and we're expecting a decision early this summer, which will likely change our interpretation a little bit. So on some level, we're following how the law is evolving, And we change what a cautious interpretation is based on the last court to give us some ruling on the public records law. So to some extent, yes, the goalpost is moving while you're aiming at it.
Now with that being said, from my discussions with our leadership that charged us here, we have been charged with being on the more cautious side as opposed to on the more aggressive side. And as a committee, that's kind of what we're charged with. And we may have instances where there's some things we may have to discuss related to that, but in general, a request is just a request. You're not mandated to comply. The law, for the most part now, based on the court case that you just said, essentially said that no, just because someone submits an interest, that does not mean they have to be made public. It's not until they actually apply. And I know from that has been upheld and tried and upheld, but we have been charged with being a little more cautious than other entities maybe have been in the past. Yes, certainly. Moving on. Thank you. Any other questions? So we'll move on to item 8B, which is our discussion of the marketing strategy, and that's going to be given to us by Robin Merrick.
Good afternoon again, everyone. Just to give you some idea of when we talk about marketing for this position, we're essentially talking about advertisements that will go forward on behalf of the university seeking candidates for the position as it's listed in the qualifications. What we're going to do, the position description that you see before you will be shaped and modified some so that it will be in keeping with what we typically see in those type of advertisements around the country. So as I understand, the board wants to do a wide and broad search so that we will reach out to as many candidates as we possibly can. And so doing so, we're going to talk about national and regional publications that are germane to the higher education community. So many of you are familiar with the Chronicle of Higher Education. We'll start there. Work with Inside Higher Education, Diverse Issues in Higher Education, and the Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. And Dr. Sam mentioned something earlier about HBCU Digest. We'll be working with all of these publications to help us advertise for the position. We'll also be reaching out to some local interests, local and state type publications, and we're still working out the details as to whether or not we'll work with the Advocate specifically, but we'll talk more about the local newspapers and how they'll be a part of our advertisement. And we'd like to integrate technology a bit. Our social media, we'll be using that in a very tasteful way going forward with the position. As I understand, lots of presidential candidates these days are very high tech, and they're out there on social media themselves. So we'll see just how that's going to work for us. And since I work with the alumni, we're going to use our alumni chapters. We have about 80 chapters around this country that we'll be reaching out to. We're watching this search very carefully, and we'd love to chime in and assist in any way possible. So we'll be sending the advertisements to them as well and using that means. And lastly, we will be providing updates to you on a regular basis to the website for that's being developed, as well as the media advisories and releases that will go forward about the search committee, as well as the Board of Supervisors meetings. And I'd like to introduce to you, some of you already know Mr. Henry Tillman. Henry's Media Relations and Communications Director. Henry, are you waving? I can't see you. Okay. Very good. Henry will be working with us as well. He's on staff here in the system office, so he'll be working with us to assist along with human resources, because this is a personnel matter, so we'll be reaching out to them as well. They've got the accounts and what have you set up for many of the advertisements. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Robin. Help us be it Mr. Brown, Marcus Brown. I don't know if he's here, as well as Clark Wilson. Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your efforts. If there are no questions to Ms. Merrick, moving on to number 9. We'll just, behind tab number 3, if you look there, we have a timeline for the proposed schedule of meeting. Also, we had it on PowerPoint here. That's okay if it's not there. It's behind tab number 3, the proposed meetings of the timeline that I have for you. For the most part, we'll meet on Thursdays with the exception of our upcoming meeting, which is scheduled for March 23rd. We also have integrated here also when the Board of Supervisors meetings are for Southern University. We'll be giving an update to the board as a group every single time that they have one as we proceed with our search. We're hopeful that we can conclude our search by the end of June, as we've been given a goal of having selected someone by July 1st. Mr. White.
You have proposed time for the meetings yet?
Hopefully this time right here, 4 o'clock. What I guarantee you is we'll start on time and we'll try to finish within an hour. Yes.
Okay, there we go. In terms of the timeline, if we're not able to find a quality semifinalist by this deadline, do we have some flexibility to maybe recommend to the board additional timing to get the right candidate for the position?
Great question. I would hope that we would. Dr. Tarver, could you speak on that?
Yes, I think that will come time we will have a discussion about the progress to make it. Not going to be a continuous process until it's filled, which just means the board has to prepare to do something about that position, because the current president, the contract expires on June 30th. That's why we have the July 1st deadline. Beyond that, we're talking about a different new position, remember, because we have an interim chancellor on the Baton Rouge campus and an outgoing president.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Jackson.
One question, and I might be speaking prematurely. I'm looking at the timeline. What's the timeline or deadline for individuals to apply?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Sure. The suggestion from Board Chair Tarver, Ms. Woods, was that maybe you comment on that as far as a proposed deadline for that?
No, I'm not talking. Email, sir. Usually our previous search, we did a month and a half, and based on the timeline we were thinking, if you all begin advertising in what's your date? I don't have it in front of me. What's your date for beginning your advertising?
We don't have that here, but we've been told that we could expect advertisements to go out
in the next week.
Next week.
Yeah. Correct. So you would probably need to think about running the ad for about a month, and in that give them a timeline somewhere near a month from whenever you start. I would say that's how we did it the last search when we worked on it.
We've had a couple of problems in our last search. Much of it had to do with the season of the year.
Yeah.
We were talking about Thanksgiving into Christmas, and that's not a very good time.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, it was a shorter time frame, so we were trying to do too much in a short period of time. And we thought there's a better season of the year. You stretch it out, it'll be more time. But because of technology, the word's going to get around faster, and the responses are going to be in faster. So I like it largely depends on what kind of response we get.
Mm-hmm.
And we see we've got an adequate response within a certain time frame. If we need to extend it a little bit more, all we do is we try to get to July 1. And if it looks like we're going to push against that date, then we make the adjustments and the adaptations we need to.
So I would estimate at least 30 days, but you may want to do 45, depending. Okay. Do you want to, I can work with Robin to come up with specific dates. Okay.
That'd be perfect. Okay. We'll make sure we get back with that would be. Dr. Miller, you okay with that? Sounds good? Okay. Anybody, any questions? Oh.
I'm waiting to see if, no, he said he doesn't have anything.
Okay. From cyberspace, great. We'll move on to agenda 10. Any other business, any comments before we, Dr. Miller?
How do we go about developing an instrument for evaluating candidates?
Sure. Questions about evaluating candidates. In theory, as we get resumes, we'll have that discussion amongst each other. And yeah, and then we'll go from there. That'll be the initial thing, how we all feel. After that, Dr. Tarver, you said you had a suggestion for that?
Well, sure.
there were some professors participating in the last search who had suggested and had begun developing an instrument by which we could do an evaluation. And I believe that Dr. Miller knows who I'm speaking of. And so, Dr. Miller, it might be very useful if you and some of those professors would get together and continue to look at such a document, and perhaps at the next meeting of this group, and give us some as a discussion piece, a think piece, and then you guys can adopt something from there.
Is this similar to a scorecard, Dr. Miller, that you're referring to, like a scorecard?
Oh, yeah.
That would be wonderful. Any other business?
No, I just said that's a great idea.
With that being said, Mr. McGee, may we get a motion to adjourn? May we have a second?
Thank you so much for coming.
Mark. Mark. In.
Thank you.